Nubian origins of Egyptian pre-dynastic civilization. Kutayusha pazdvmgwertit. Aya pazdvmkutayusha pazdv. Kutayusha pazdvgzi. Kutayusha pazdvgzvmg. Wertiusha pazdvgzvmgutayue. O pazdvgzvmkutayusha pazdvs. Chkalskvmgutayusha pazdvgzvs. Vmgutayusha pazdvgzvmg. Ertiusha pazdvgzvmgutayuik. Pazdvgzvmgutayusha pazdvt. Chkalskvmgutayusha pazdvgzsi. Vmgutayusha pazdvgzvmgwe. LTSIPN. LIPRSRWS it 1 equals. Nubian origins of Egyptian pre-dynastic civilization. Gert Muller. Nubian origins of Egyptian pre-dynastic civilization. By Gert Muller. Pomegranate Publishing. London. Copyright symbol 2012 Gert Muller. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reprinted or reproduced or utilized in any form or by any electronic, mechanical, or other means, now known or hereafter invented, including photocopying and recording, or in any information storage or retrieval system, without permission in writing from the publishers. Pomegranate Publishing. London. Introduction. The origins of the ancient Egypt we all know and love lie in the pre-dynastic cultures of southern Egypt. This culture created the world's first city known as Hierakonpolis around 3800 BC. The Egyptians called it Nekhen. In this city was found evidence of the first temple, the first pottery factory, the first brewery, the first image of the falcon Horus. Hierakonpolis was part of the Naqada pre-dynastic culture of southern Egypt, which began around 4000 BC. It was located around 100 miles from Aswan in present-day Nubia. Few people, however, are aware of the technical accomplishments and cultural impulses that came to Hierakonpolis from Lower and Upper Nubia. It made possible the economic and military expansion that created the Egyptian civilization of dynastic times. Without Nubia there would have been no Hierakonpolis. Witness the Nubian origins of pre-dynastic Egyptian civilization in these pages. Origins of the followers of Horus, hieroglyphic. There is evidence to suggest the base of the followers of Horus was in Edfu and that this was the pre-dynastic border with Nubia, the land south of Egypt. First, the patron deity of Edfu is Horus Bedeti, named after Bedet, an ancient name for Edfu. In Bujbet, the H and T are shown with dots beneath them. In Buj, means seat, throne, Bet T 2 thrones or the double throne, and Bahut 2. Spread out the wings linking both Horus and Edfu with the falcon and the origins of kingship in Egypt. This city was the base of Horus Bedeti and his followers. The second nome or province of Upper Egypt was called Throne of Horus, again linking this nome and its capital with Horus and kingship. Edfu was the capital of this small province, which separated the third nome called Ten or Shrine, whose capital was Nekhen /Hierakonpolis, from the first nome called Tarseti or Land of the Bow. Second, at the advent of the 1st dynasty, the Egyptian political border was set at Swinet, modern Aswan, at the 1st cataract. 2. The south of this was the polity of Tarseti, Nubia, between the 1st and 2nd cataract, which was in decline at this time. But Tarseti was also the name of the first nome of Upper Egypt from Philae, a swan, and Kom-Ombo to the throne of Horus nome. Kom-Ombo was called in Egyptian Pa-Sobk after the god Sobk, who was associated with southern Upper Egypt. In the famine stele, the governor of Elephantine, Yebu, in Egyptian, is referred to as chief of the Nubians in Yebu, which shows that the people of the nome Ta-Seti were considered ethnically Nubian, although they were Egyptian citizens because they lived within its political borders. From the beginning of Naqada IC, 3800 BC, to the end of the 1st dynasty there was a polity of changing size. From Kubania just north of the first cataract to Buhen near the 2nd cataract. It was known to archaeologists as the A group, but was known to the Egyptians as Ta-Seti. It probably began as a collection of small chiefdoms, but by the end of Naqada II, had become a powerful chiefdom with its capital on the site of Qustul. We can only conclude that before the annexation of a part of Ta-Seti by the first pharaoh, this nome was considered part of the polity of Ta-Seti. After the annexation it retained its name. Since the throne of Horus nome borders on the Ta-Seti nome, this would make the throne of Horus the first nome considered Egyptian before the annexation. This would make Edfu the limit of the Egyptians at some point in the pre-dynastic. The University of Chicago's Oriental Institute has this to say about the A group. Much of the power of the A group came from trade. Its location gave it access to gold from the eastern desert, carnelian from the western desert, and exotic products like incense, ivory, and ebony from further south along the Nile. http://oi.chicago.edu/museum/nubia/a group.html retrieved 5. October 2011 1730. This would appear to have been a precursor to the trade carried out by the sons of Cush that we repeatedly came across in Chapter 2. We remember that Sobk's temple on the mountain which held up the sky was made of carnelian, a spelling variant of carnelian. This semi-precious stone is from the direction of the southwest in the Sahara of Nubia. In Egypt, carnelian was associated with the south, as was Sobk. Third, in Butch, one of the names of Edfu is Tepi Toi. Tepi Shma means head of the south, the southern frontier, and Shma refers to the south. The word Toi means lands. One can only assume, based on this, that Tepi Toi means head of the lands, the frontier of the lands, which would make perfect sense if Edfu used to be the border with Ta-Seti. More along this line of reasoning would be, again from Butch, Teb is a name for Edfu, and Teb Meteb of the north is a name for Tanis, a city at the northern extremity of Egypt, as if they were perceived as opposites. Also compare Mezentiyu, the blacksmiths of Horus who made harpoons, spears, etc. with Mezenti, the title of the high priest of Edfu. This links the blacksmiths of Horus with the office of the high priest at Edfu. Mezent Rest, Mezent of the south, is a name of Edfu, and Mezent Met, Mezent of the north, is a name of Tanis. Again, this suggests they were perceived as opposites. The only way this would make sense is if Edfu was the southern frontier of Egypt at one point. The term Kentiyu refers to dwellers in the south, i.e. Nubians, the people of the Tanite nome, which means at one point the people of Edfu occupied the same place as the Nubians in the equation. All this essentially means that the base of Horus Bedati and his followers was established at the border with Nubia, probably on the site of a pre-existing town. This strongly suggests coming from the direction of Sudan. Origins of the followers of Horus, archaeological The context of the followers of Horus, the future pre-dynastic kings, coming from the direction of Sudan probably at the beginning of Naqada II, explains why a town which serves as the southern border would also be called the Two Thrones. There is a perception that Edfu is a town from Ptolemaic times, but there are pre-dynastic objects from Edfu in the National Museum of Warsaw. A discoid mace head from Naqada I and a pear-shaped mace head, thought to be from Naqada II, are among the items. We notice that they are connected with war, and Horus Bedati was a war god. We would associate the pear-shaped mace head with the arrival of Horus Bedati and his followers, pre-dynastic and early dynastic antiquities from Edfu in the National Museum of Warsaw by Joanna Aksamit in Egypt at its Origins, Studies in Memory of Barbara Adams. Edited by Stan Hendricks, R. F. Friedman, KMC Aloich, M. Klodnicki, Peters Publishers, 2004 p. 521. Being on the border meant Edfu could only serve as an initial base. In order to get a grip on the rest of southern Upper Egypt, between Isna and Edfu the followers would have had to move somewhat inland and make a new base. Are there any candidates for this first inland base? It would have to be closely associated with Horus and his symbol, the falcon, and almost certainly serve as the first capital of southern Upper Egypt. Hierakonpolis, the city of the falcon, identified with Horus, and called Nekhen in antiquity, it was a flourishing settlement in Amratian times, Naqada I 4000 to 3500 BC. Rice, 1991, 31 p. Their arrival, however, would have been at the start of Naqada II, at which point they would have made it the city of the falcon. From here descendants of the followers would have used Hierakonpolis as a base to move to centers such as Thinis/Abydos to join or become the elites there. Is there any archaeology to support a line of reasoning that is largely based on the hieroglyphic inscriptions? Is there anything to support the pre-dynastic elites at the relevant sites having come from the direction of Sudan? Cultural transfer between Nubia and Egypt is suggested by the cattle burials in the elite cemetery at Hierakonpolis. Locality 6. This practice does not seem to have been indigenous to pre-dynastic Egypt, but is attested at Qustul in Lower Nubia. Early Dynastic Egypt by Toby Wilkinson, Routledge, 2005 p. 176. Locality 6 at Hierakonpolis is elsewhere referred to as 6 Hong Kong dollars. As we have already stated, the Tarseti polity was centered at Qustul in Lower Nubia. There is also reference to Hierakonpolis and Qustul, and the shared iconography of early kingship at both sites, evidence for deeper cultural exchange between the late pre-dynastic polities of Upper Egypt and Lower Nubia. Wilkinson 2005 p. 345. These are specifically elite similarities. We would expect the appearance of the Horus falcon at Hierakonpolis to coincide with the beginning of the Naqada II period, when we posit the arrival of Horus Bedati and his followers. In this connection we are pleased to reveal the fabulous malachite falcon. We realized we had yet another first for Hierakonpolis, Egypt's oldest falcon figurine. The columned hall at 6 Hong Kong dollars and Other Wonders by Xavier Drux and Renee Friedman, in Nekhen News Volume 19 Fall 2007 8 p. In the next article of the same issue of Nekhen News we are told the falcon figurine dates to the early Naqada II period. We are also told the 6 Hong Kong dollars falcon is the prototype for all later representations. Also, according to this article, the falcon does not appear in iconography of the Naqada I period. The scholars then conclude concerning the falcon. A limited number of iconographic elements existed from at least the early Naqada II period, perhaps exclusively at Hierakonpolis, where they may have been symbols reserved for the utmost elite. The Falcon has landed, Falcons in the City of the Falcon by Stan Hendricks and Renee Friedman, in Neccan News Volume 19 Fall 2007 10p. The timing of its first occurrence, and its royal connection, agrees with the idea of Horus Bedati and his falcon symbol. Arriving in southern Upper Egypt at the beginning of the Naqada II. Its exclusivity to Hierakonpolis, the nearest power center to Lower Nubia, and the only place exhibiting elite similarities with the south, strongly suggests this also is one of those elite similarities. Lower Nubia is not the only option for the origins of this elite-based influence. We discover that in the region of central Sudan, there are a number of associations between the humans, cattle, and high social rank in burial rites in the 5th millennium BC Khartoum Neolithic, have been implicated in the ideological foundations of later Nubian and Egyptian complex societies. Pilgrimage and Household in the Ancient Near East by Joy McCorriston, Cambridge University Press, 2011 p. 131. Which means the present author is not the only one thinking of influence from Central Sudan reaching Upper Egypt and Lower Nubia. Central Sud and is a more attractive option because these burials are older there, 5th millennium BC, than in Lower Nubia and Upper Egypt, where they are attested in the mid-late 4th millennium BC in the Naqada III period. It essentially means Central Sudan was almost 1,000 years ahead of similar developments in Upper Egypt. It would appear the followers of Horus, or their forerunners, may have established Tar Seti between the first two cataracts and beyond. The oldest dates for the A group culture are from Naqada 1c, 3800 BC. This may have been part of the expansion from further south to the southern border of pre-dynastic Egypt. The shared iconography of early kingship between Hierakonpolis and Qustul deserves further comment. The Museum of the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute has an informative website. It details the evidence of an object from Tar Seti under the heading "Could this be a Nubian object with Egyptian images?" This incense burner is distinctively Nubian in form. Carved in the technique of Nubian rock art, it is decorated on the rim with typical Nubian designs. It was found in the tomb of a Nubian ruler at Qustul and incorporates images associated with Egyptian pharaohs, a procession of sacred boats, the white crown of Upper Egypt, a falcon deity, and the palace facade called a Sarik. It appears to represent a ritual that involved a royal procession by boat to a palace. The scenes depicted on the Qustul incense burner have excited considerable interest and discussion. Why would seemingly Egyptian symbols have been used in Nubia? One interpretation is that Nubian A group rulers and early Egyptian pharaohs used related royal symbols. The similarities in rock art of A group Nubia and Upper Egypt support this position. http://oi.chicago.edu/museum/Nubia/akib.html retrieved 14 October 2011 1709. A word or two must be said to put similarities in rock art of A group Nubia and Upper Egypt in a suitable context. Up until 1987 there was only one rock art site north of the 1st Cataract. The vast majority of rock art is from the Nubian desert, so similarities have to be looked at in that context. See http://www.hierakonpolis-online.org/site/hk64.html As for the falcon deity, it is depicted on the incense burner from Custal in the same conceptual way it is depicted at Hierakonpolis, as if they were following the same tradition. The rulers at Custal were literally followers of Horus. The white crown was used by the pre-dynastic rulers of both Upper Egypt and Lower Nubia, but, judging from admittedly much later evidence, it would appear that it was also used by kings further south. In the 17th century BC, during the second intermediate period of Egyptian history, Lower Nubia was ruled by the king of Kush, based at the three-road cataract city of Kerma. We know this because Egyptian expatriates of the time left behind inscriptions praising the ruler of Kush and explaining what works they had carried out in his behalf. Most of this evidence comes from what had formerly been the Egyptian fort of Buhen, around the 2nd cataract. A professor at the University of Lille informs us of an interesting find from this site thought to depict a king of Kush. The only monument which is thus far considered to show a figure of one of those kings is the famous Buhen Stele. The man wears the white crown of Upper Egypt adorned with a urus, which was proper to any kind of sovereign during that period, and a short apron. He also holds a bow and arrows in the left hand and mace in the right. The cultural significance of iconographic and epigraphic data found in the Kingdom of Kerma by Dominique Valbel, in Nubian Studies. Proceedings of the 9th Conference of the International Society for Nubian Studies, edited by Timothy Kendall, August 20–26, 1998. Also available at http://wisinja.homestead.com/valbel.pdf. The nubiologist Laszlo Tarok had this to say about the white crown and the king of Kush. For lack of royal images from Kerma, the appearance of the insignia of the kings of Kush remains unknown. It is highly improbable, however, that the Egyptian white crown on the Buhen stele would have been one of these insignia. It was more likely that it was a declaration of the classic Kerma rulers' claim over the kingship in Upper Egypt. Between two worlds, the frontier region between ancient Nubia and Egypt, 3700 BC 500 AD by Laszlo Tarok, Koninklijke Brill, 2009 p108. This paucity on is largely the result of the white crown being seen as an exclusively Egyptian symbol, even though we have seen that it appears on a Lower Nubian object, displaying iconography of rulership, in the pre-dynastic period. Yet it is around the four-road cataract in Kush that a model in the natural environment is found for the white crown and the urus as it appears on the Kerman king of Kush. In a powerful essay, the nubiologist Timothy Kendall informs us that the ancient Egyptians and Nubians believed that images, whether human-made or natural, had the living spirit or magic power of whatever they were thought to represent. Long, tube-like rocks were thus thought to have the power of fertility. He also tells us that similar beliefs were still held by modern animist peoples of the Sudan. We are not specifically told in the essay, but these animist peoples reside in southern Sudan. We are then told Jebel Barkal, a mountain around the 4th cataract, was viewed as a colossal phallic symbol, becoming identified with Amun and Osiris. It was also identified with the Ben stone of Heliopolis. He then reveals, as royal statue, the pinnacle probably also symbolized the ultimate primeval king and royal ancestor Osiris, who is often shown wearing a white crown. Such an identity, which can be proved in a roundabout way, data forthcoming, may have given rise to the legend reported by Diodorus that Osiris originally came from Nubia and colonized Egypt, and the Ethiopian king GS wore tall knobbed crowns. Because from the east the pinnacle looked most strongly like a rearing Urus wearing the white crown, the rock was identified as Nekhbet, goddess of Upper Egyptian kingship and the white crown. When the Egyptians conquered Upper Nubia in early Dynasty 18, they evidently believed that they had rediscovered in Jebel Barkal not only the birthplace of Amun but also the original home of Nekhbet, the source of Upper Egyptian kingship, and the white crown. This invented history immediately allowed the pharaohs to claim rule over Nubia as an extension of Upper Egypt, which, by this tradition, had, since the time of Re, always been a part of the domain of Amun of Karnak. The monument of Taharqa on Jebel Barkal by Timothy Kendall, in Neustfeld for Chunjanim Sudan und in Eritrea. Edited by Stefan Wenig, Harrisoitz Verlag, 2004 40p. But was this an invented history? Might the Egyptians actually have been correct about this pinnacle being the origins of the kingship of Upper Egypt? There is evidence that rulers of Kush in the Second Intermediate Period had claims on Upper Egypt, as theorized by Taroque. The link between Jebel Barkal and Upper Egyptian kingship therefore predates the early Dynasty 18, proposed by Kendall. We also know that Kush tried to assert this claim before early Dynasty 18. A newly discovered inscription in the tomb of Sabinakht at El Kab described in dramatic terms a major attack on Egypt by Kush that combined forces of Kush, the tribes of Wewa, the island, of Kenthanfa, Punt and the Mije, overrunning Egypt as far as the vicinity of the Asiatics, Hyksos. The kingdom of Kush in the 4th Cataract Archaeological Salvage of the Oriental Institute Nubian Expedition 2007 season by Jeff Imberling and Bruce Williams, in African Reports Volume 7 edited by Henryk Painer and Stefan Jakubielski, Gdansk. Archaeological Museum Heritage and Protection Fund 2010 8p. Interestingly El Kab, where this inscription was found, was anciently called Nekheb. This city was sacred to Nekhbet, the goddess of the white crown and Upper Egyptian kingship. Kendall also theorizes a pre-Egyptian reverence for this pinnacle. The Napatan kings, the Egyptian pharaohs before them, and probably even the prehistoric Nubians had seen in the pinnacle the form of a colossal figure. Kendall, 2004, 39p. Kendall does not specifically say so, but this presumably was a colossal figure with a white crown shape on its head and a Urus. A prehistoric Nubian powerful chief, the type of whose existence in the 5th or early 4th millennium BC around the 3 road cataract and all the way to Khartoum is archaeologically proven, could have modeled his headgear on this white crown shape to show that he represented this powerful deity. This would have been an awesome way to cement his authority. With these possibilities in mind, the occurrence of the white crown on the Kustal incense burner might represent this symbol of chiefly power as an indigenous development moving from the 4th cataract area of pre-dynastic Kush to the 2nd cataract area of pre-dynastic Tarseti. The much later Buhenstler white crown on a king of Kush can be seen as a natural continuation of this tradition. Was Horus Bedati the son of a white crown wearing 4 Cataract chieftain who worshipped the Jebel Bark al-Osiris mountain. Did he recruit mercenaries / tribute collectors from the Khartoum area where tall Nilotic types of related culture lived? Was his father murdered by a rival chieftain from the desert to the east of the 2nd Cataract, where people could be found who were closely related to the Seth-worshipping rulers of Naqada / Nubt in northern Upper Egypt? Did Horus flee with his mercenaries to the area between the 1st and 2nd Cataract, which resulted in taking over first Edfu and then Hierakonpolis? Was this the basis for the later pre-dynastic wars that raged between Hierakonpolis and Naqada, later remembered as conflict between Horus and Seth? Returning to the issue of the White Crown, the distance in time from the late pre-dynastic, when the White Crown is first attested in Lower Nubia, to the Second Intermediate period, when it is first attested in Kush, should not be an issue. The time scale separating the modern animist peoples of Sudan from the New Kingdom Nubians, with whom they are compared by Kendall, is about 3,500 to 3,300 years. It is much greater than what divided His Second Intermediate period from the late pre-dynastic, 1800. 1,600 years. Furthermore, according to Kendall, the Egyptians made it clear that the Kushite origins of the Upper Egyptian kingship date back to the time of Re, who we know to have been the first divine ruler of Egypt before the spirits of the dead, the followers of Horus. This sounds like a reference to the earlier parts of the pre-dynastic period, Naqada I, just as the followers of Horus is a reference to the later pre-dynastic period preceding the 1st dynasty, Naqada II-3. Since we have come across Central Sudanic influences in Lower Nubia and Upper Egypt in the form of cattle burials, there is no reason to be hostile to the White Crown possibly having the same origins. There are other indications of Central Sudanic influence, more common in the cemeteries and settlements of the A group in Nubia. Whole ostrich eggs were frequently placed in the graves of children. In Egypt, however, they are rare and appear restricted to only the wealthiest of pre-dynastic tombs, as if the exalted status of $6 Hierakonpolis locality 6 wasn't clear enough. The 6 eggs from Structure 07 currently represent the largest collection of ostrich eggs all from one place. A Short History of Ostrich Eggs by Renee Friedman, Neckan News Vol 19 Fall 2007 12p. Further ostrich egg shells were found in Tomb 23 located at $6. It is as if only the wealthiest people in Hierakonpolis followed this A group custom. But does this custom originate amongst the A group? The practice of burying ostrich eggshells with children is also recorded by Sudanese archaeologist Mustafa Sadig at the Neolithic site of Es Sour just north of Meroe in central Sudan. The site is dated to 4200 BC to 4000 BC, predating both the Naqada and A group cultures. In the Middle Nile, the practice of pot burials was first discovered at El Qadida and seems to have been restricted to young children. Fragments of ostrich eggs, shells, and one bead may indicate the types of offerings placed inside the pot. http://azharasadic.blogspot.com/p/s-sour-near-Sudan.html retrieved 12 September 2011 0041. Indications of Sudanese influence can also be found in pottery. The oldest pottery from the central Sudanese sites of Sagai, and Sarawaba from the 8th and 9th millennia BC. Pottery from Upper Nubia and the western Nubian desert has been found dating back to 9000 to 8000 BC. A historical context thus exists for the following observation on the Neolithic pottery of Sudan. Nubian ceramics have been placed on the same par with the goldsmith's art by Dietrich Widung. As an art historian, he posits that the finds from Cairo, El Qadida from the late 5th and early 4th millennium BC are unequal in technical and artistic standard in the Egyptian Nile Valley. Nubian pharaohs and Meroitic kings, The Kingdom of Kush by Nishia Desiree Harkless, Author House, 2006 p. 179. This is not surprising as the Sudanese had thousands of years to develop their craft. This period of the early 5th millennium BC is when the late Neolithic developed in central Sudan and the western Nubian desert. Of this period in the Nubian desert, it is said, in general, pottery of the late Neolithic was fired under higher temperatures than that of either the early or middle Neolithic and resulted in greater vitrification of the clay body and harder, more durable wares. The transformation in pottery production reflects important shifts in technology and pottery use that are part of changes in social organization visible in the construction of monuments, megaliths, and the understanding of time. Calendar circle and megalithic alignments. Nabtar Playa black-topped pottery, technological innovation and social change by Kit Nelson, in Egypt at its origins 3. Proceedings of the Third International Conference Origins of the State, Pre-dynastic and Early Dynastic Egypt. July-August 2008, edited by Renee Friedman and Peter N. Fisk, Buitt Geverage Peters E. N. Department Eustace Studies, 2011 p. 698-699. The sites in question are located at the border of modern Egypt and Sudan west of the Second Cataract, west of Lower Nubia. The social organization and monument construction that were to characterize Old Kingdom Egypt are first seen here. Pottery similar to that from this time and place are later seen in the Badarian culture, 4400 BC. A similar development of late Neolithic pottery can be seen developing in central Sudan from 4900 BC. During the final Neolithic another change occurs. Pottery made from Cusier-clastic clay is, thus far, only found in association with final Neolithic and possibly more recent deposits, dating to 5800 BP, uncalibrated, and younger. It is the first use of mile-forward/geological clays, marking the beginning of a technological change in pottery production. Ceramic types of the Nabtar Kaiserbar area by Kit Nelson, in Holocene Settlement of the Egyptian Sahara, The Pottery of Nabtar Playa Volume 2 edited by Fred Wendorf, Romuald Schilt and Kit Nelson, Clower Academic, 2002 14 p. This technological change in pottery production is never really explained in the paper. Wilkinson explains in greater detail, in The Context of Hierakonpolis, Polis, how this led to a revolution. Until the beginning of the Naqada II period, pottery in the Nile Valley was made exclusively from alluvial clays. These have the advantage of being easy to work, shape and fire, requiring only primitive technology available at household level. Most of the pottery from Badarian and Naqada I sites was probably made in this small-scale way. There is evidence from Hierakonpolis of specialist pottery production as early as the Naqada I period, but this is unusual, reflecting the advanced state of social stratification and craft specialization at Hierakonpolis. This type of Specialist workshop became much more common from the beginning of Naqada II, and was marked by the advent of a more complex ceramic technology, producing vessels of a new and distinctive type. Pots made from desert or marl clays require much more controlled firing conditions than vessels made from alluvial clays. The kiln must also reach a far higher temperature for the process to be successful. The appearance of decorated ware made from marl clay in the ceramic repertoire of Upper Egypt represents a major technological advance, one which seems to have been made possible by the increasing activity of specialist potters. The production of pottery for a market by professional workshops had a profound impact upon methods of distribution and exchange in pre-dynastic Egypt. In the archaeological record, one of the most striking phenomena is the spread of Upper Egyptian ceramic technology northwards during the latter part of the Naqada II period. By Naqada IIC, 3400 to 3300 BC, pottery made in classic Upper Egyptian fashion appears in graves at sites such as Haraga and Gerza, near the entrance to the Fayum, while by Naqada IID, 3300 to 3200 BC, it has spread to the extremities of the delta like Buto and Minshat Abu Omar. Wilkinson, 2005, p. 34-35. We are told the advent of marl clay pottery at Hierakonpolis required more controlled firing conditions and was a major technological advance which was made possible by the increasing activity of specialist potters. The beginning of the Naqada II period, when we first encounter marl clay ware, is dated to between 3700 to 3600 BC. The technological change in pottery production as a result of the first use of marl/geological clays to the west of Lower Nubia dates to 5800 BP and younger, as noted by Nelson. Calibrated dates from sites in these playas tend to be several centuries older than their uncalibrated counterparts. A calibrated estimate of 4200 BC is thus conservative but tentative. This makes the Nubian Western Desert use of the firing techniques necessary for making marl clay ware older than that used during the Naqada II period. This led to the spread of Upper Egyptian ceramic technology northwards during the latter part of the Naqada II period and represented the economic unification of Egypt. Essentially Nubian technology of superior firing and marl clay prospecting aided Hierakonpolis to expand into the rest of Upper Egypt, followed by Lower Egypt. The improved firing conditions and specialist production also enabled the making of brewing installations based on parallel rows of ceramic vats. See The Archaeology of Early Egypt by David Wengrow, Cambridge University Press, 2006, 95 p. It also made possible the mass production of bread molds. The result was that large bodies of people, like an army, could be fed throughout the year. It should not surprise us to discover that economic unification, driven by the trade dominance of Hierakonpolis, was followed by warfare and the start of political unification. War followed between the Horus worshippers of Hierakonpolis under King Scorpion and the Seth worshippers of Nubt, the site known in modern times as Naqada. The king of the Seth worshippers of northern Upper Egypt wore a red crown while the king of southern Upper Egypt wore the white crown. King Scorpion was later depicted wearing the united white and red crown, symbolizing the unification of most of Upper Egypt. In the next generation, King Nama, based at Thinis near Abydos, is the king of Upper Egypt and conquers Lower Egypt. It is not properly understood how the change of power from Hierakonpolis to Thinis took place, but the importance of the former is acknowledged by the kings of the latter. The pharaoh was identified with Horus from the start of the 1st dynasty, as is evident from the names of the kings which began with Hor. Also the cult of Horus of Nekhen was followed by the royal houses of the 1st and 2nd dynasties, with additions to the temple in Hierakonpolis being made continually. Willinson 1999 p. 50. It is likely that there was a close relationship between the houses of Hierakonpolis and Thinis, given that King Ka of Thinis represented his name in a sarek under a falcon, just like King Scorpion of Hierakonpolis. Also the patron god of Thinis / Abydos was Kenshamentiu, who later became a title or aspect of Osiris, the father of Horus. The family relationship between the patron deities of Hierakonpolis and Thinis / Abydos also suggests a connection between the ruling houses of the two power centers. Did the followers of Horus bring the sycamore to Egypt? With their knowledge of southern products, they would have increased the menu of East African items needed for their tastes and ritual requirements. It was almost certainly their knowledge of regions further south of their original homeland, around Khartoum, that was preserved in the spells of the Book of the Dead. The Rift Valley lakes of East Africa were places of ritual importance which may have had its origins in the region, being used as a royal hunting ground. The high biodiversity of places like Mount Kenya and Olduinio Elengai and of birds around the lakes makes this a possibility. This southern trade helped enrich the kingdoms of Hierakonpolis and Tarseti, both of which had elite influence from central Sudan, which is here interpreted as input from the followers of Horus. If so, then they must also have had contact with Nabta Playa in the final Neolithic, a period which continued well into the mid-4th millennium BC. It was here that they came into contact with the marl clay prospectors and potters. This is backed by another similarity between Nakada II culture and that of Central Sudan, but which is not shared with the Nubian Western Desert. Jain culture, also called Nakada II culture, centered primarily at Nakada and Hierakonpolis in Upper Egypt, and was characterized by pear-shaped mace heads. http://www.britannica.com/topic/topic/231949/Jain-culture retrieved 20. October 2011 1950. Another source informs us that mace heads are another object found across the Nile Valley. They are seen in various shapes. The question of their origin is complex. C. Aloich concludes them to be of Sudanese advent on the basis of their frequency in the region. However, the question is complicated by finds in the Fayume, 5,400 to 4,400 Cal. BC, and at Marimdi Beni Salam, 4,400 to 4,000 Cal. BC. For level V, while the earliest mace heads at R12 publication date to period 1B1, situated in the first H. Alph 5. Th. Millennium BC. Regardless of their origin, mace heads have been found at all 5 Th. millennium sites excepting those of the Western Desert. A brief overview of the cultural continuity along the Nile Valley by Joseph Lafayette Gaston. Available at http://www.script.com/doc/937612226//Anke brief overview of the cultural continuity along the Nile Valley during the 5th millennium BC retrieved 20th October 2011 1958. We also learn that furnished child burials suggest ascribed social status. Tools and weaponry were not common. Polished stone axes still seem to have been rare at Cairo during the early Neolithic, and conical /pear-shaped mace heads are only occasionally found. The Nubian Past, An Archaeology of Sudan by David N. Edwards, Routledge, 2004 54 p. Cairo is a Sudanese Neolithic site about 20 kilometers from Khartoum, whose graves can be dated to the 5th millennium BC, 4,850. 4250 BC. The occasional occurrence of pear-shaped mace heads at Cairo is older than their occurrence during the Naqada II culture in Upper Egypt, which started between 3700 to 3600 BC. The ascribed social status implied by furnished chid burials, revealed by Edwards, from Cairo show social stratification in central Sudan several centuries before the Naqada culture even existed. While there may be debate about the origins of mace heads in general, there is a little more clarity when it comes to pear-shaped mace heads. Lafayette Gaston shows in two tables the radiocarb on date range of certain cultural periods and whether they had pear-shaped mace heads. The oldest Neolithic site with pear-shaped mace heads is R12 from the 3 Road Cataract region. The pear-shaped mace was present in the oldest phase, which dated to 4890 to 4600 BC. The oldest in Egypt to have this weapon was from the northern end of the Nile Valley just before the delta, Merimdi Beni Salam, which had a date range of 4600 to 4400 BC. The edges with the Upper Nubian location. Because there are other elite Nubian associated influences evident in Naqada. 2. It is logical to see the pear-shaped mace heads as originating in Upper Nubia and Central Sudan rather than Lower Egypt. The pear-shaped mace head was to become a formidable weapon during the Naqada II in Upper Egypt. The Amratian, Naqada I, mace, was quite effective if the blow fell exactly in the right place, breaking the skull or cutting an artery, but the Jayan was armed with a greatly superior weapon. Instead of being disc-shaped with a cutting edge, it was a solid pear-shaped object, hafted like an Amratian on horn or hippopotamus hide, and by one blow could kill the enemy or stun him or break his arm and so render him helpless. The Splendor That Was Egypt by Margareta Murray, Dover, 2004, originally published 1949, p. 5-6. Conclusion. Revolutions in technology, inspired by events south of the 1st Cataract, allowed industrial-scale production of bread, beer, and pottery to contain all sorts of materia. Which in turn allowed for trade dominance and the supporting of an army. The pear-shaped mace head, however, gave that army a powerful military advantage which allowed pre-dynastic hierarchopolis to expand into the rest of the country and become the prototype for dynastic Egypt. See our website, http://www.pome-granite.org/. Like our Facebook page, https://www.facebook.com/pomegranate publishing. Other titles from the Pomegranate Library include http://www.amazon.com/racial-unity-ancient-egyptians-nubians-ebook/b003-67796 This face proves, beyond reasonable doubt, that the ancient Egyptians were of Nubian race. Great by http://black-origins-ancient-civilizations-ebook/b00/. We founded their first civilization. Great by http://black-origins-ancient-roman-emperors-ebook/b00G2a3-6/. http://black-origins-ancient-roman-emperors-ebook/b003-6779699/. We founded Europe's second civilization too. Great by http://the-black-madonna-christ-ebook/b00D1yep62 Why was it so important to change the color from black to white? Great by http://the-black-goddess-bible-ebook/b00D9 Learn about the Afro-Canaanites and the Euro-Canaanites. Great by http://unmistakably-black-sculpture-civilization-ebook/b00C9rh8p2 The Anunnaki were the same color as the ancient Nubians. They kept that one quiet. Great by http://www.amazon.com/unmistakably-black-sculpture-civil Ization-ebook/dp/b00bwb6y7y/. The first European civilization was unmistakably black. Tell a racist. Great by http://black-sculpture-mosaics-ebook/b00C6f1y7a/. The Moorish image on the cover below is of a Roman god. He was more than a man. Great by http://black-sculpture-ebook/b00C82vu7a/. White Persians used to curl their hair in imitation of black Persians. How times have changed. Great by http://black-sculpture-paintings-ebook/b00ca6bihw/. We are the indigenous people of everywhere. Great by http://www.amazon.com/the-ancient-black-hebrews-ebook/b00cmsg/. Guess the ancient Hebrews didn't look like Charlton Heston. Great by http://www.amazon.com/the-ancient-black-arabs-ebook/b00bt1eroi/. The ancient Arabs did not resemble Saddam Hussein. Discover what the ancient sources say. Great by http://the-blackheads-africans-messopotamia-ebook/b00bpsg/. Mesopotamia is the only alternative to an African origin of civilization. Oh wait, that's African too. Great by http://afro-hair-ancient-egyptians-ebook/b00bnuu51a/. The contentious matter of Egyptian hair has now been laid to rest. Great by http://www.amazon.com/eden-biblical-garden-discovered-ebook/dp/b0063i5wem/. For those who want to avoid an African origin of humanity, the Bible is assumed to be a safe refuge. False assumption. East Africa is the Garden of Eden and the land of Punt. Every temple of the ancient Egyptian, Greek and Roman world was intended to be a microcosm of Ethiopia. Learn about the sacred longitude and the source of biblical miracles. Great by http://origins-egyptian-pre-dynastic-civilization-ebook/b00bev63s/. Osiris, Horus, Amun, Hathor and the major Egyptian deities were all from the far south. Great by http://african-origin-ancient-egyptians-ebook/b00 The ancient Egyptians knew that the world was round. Great by http://www.amazon.com/african-rulers-medieval-yemen-ebook/b0079sgr4/. http://african-rulers-medieval-yemen-volume/dp/14782381000/. What is more impressive, to become a king having come from a long line of kings, or to become a king having come from a long line of the enslaved? Great by http://black-summa-physical-evidence-ebook/b00bk9x7sc/. http://black-summa-physical-evidence-part-/dp/14826394440/. Ancient Egypt was black. Now ancient Sumer is shown to have been too, using CSI level of proof. The racist is fast running out of civilizations. Great by http://www.amazon.com/black-summa-physical-evidence-ebook/dp/b00c1sky9g/. http://www.amazon.com/black-summa-physical-evidence-part//dp/14826478344/ http://black-summa-african-civilization-ebook/black-summa-african-civilization-ebook/b009mrlvly/. http://black-summa-african-origins-civilization-dp/14800652855/. For those who want to avoid an African origin of civilization, Sumer, in southern Iraq, has been a safe alternative. Not anymore. The last hiding place has been taken. Great. Bye.